Thanks for coming. We are ready to start. So my name is Jerry Thull. I'm Associate Director of the School of Communication. A lot of you guys know me from class. We're going to have a presentation today. One of the things we focus here on the School of Communication is get you guys career ready, right? Like get ready for careers in the world. One of the things that's happening right now that I'm interested in, and I've been working in higher ed ever since the World Wide Web started, I guess, but is the amazing changes that are going on right now with the way information is shared online. So one of my goals has been to really kind of engage in this and give you the opportunity to take advantage of the changes that are out there, because, well, now I'm just rambling, I'm sorry. But, change brings opportunity, and if you can be prepared for the changes that are out there, you're going to have excellent opportunity when you enter the world. And I've seen it happen for the last 15 years or so since I've been teaching here. So I was really happy to get an opportunity to invite somebody who is really doing innovation right now in online journalism, and that's Michelle Pera-McGhee. She works for an organization called Pudding. If you have not followed the Pudding, it's pudding.cool. Got it right this time. And follow them on your socials, because what they're doing is really fantastic. So,
thanks, Jerry. Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I've had a really nice day here in Flagstaff, my second day in Flagstaff ever. The first was yesterday. And it was a really nice day. Got to hang out with lots of great students and excited to meet all of you as well. So as Jerry said, I work at a place called The Pudding. Pudding.cool is where you can find us online. And I want to share with you kind of some behind the scenes today about how The Pudding works. It's kind of a unique place, and I've learned a lot in the 4.5 years that I've worked there. And I hope it has sort of some things for you to apply to your own creative pursuits as you go forward as well. Let's see. So I'm Michelle. I'm a sort of former tech software person. Computer science is what I studied in undergrad. And I was sitting writing code all day, but really I was daydreaming about lots of other things that I was way more excited about. Some of those things included making radio and long form audio storytelling that I thought was really cool and compelling. Also theater storytelling, so I did some improv. I also taught some classes on how you tell a story, a true story from your life, live on stage with nothing else, and you just tell the truth in front of a bunch of people. And I thought that was really cool and exciting, thinking about what makes a good story really at its core. I was also thinking a lot about this guy, Johnny Harris, who has a YouTube channel. He's an independent journalist who does really great video journalism. He makes a lot of maps and charts and really cool visuals and explains things, takes really complex things and makes them approachable with visuals and video. And I was also thinking about this website called The Pudding, where I did not work at the time, but they made these really cool long form stories, also tackling complex topics, usually having to do with data and telling them visually. And I just thought, wow, that's the coolest thing ever. So after I was spending way too much of my time daydreaming, I decided, okay, I'm going to quit this job doing software engineering. And I think I'm going to try to figure out how I can combine my passion for storytelling with my technical skills. So I went and worked at Axios, which was my first kind of step in the journalism world. I was on their data visualization team. And so I made a bunch of charts all day. A reporter would be like, hey, I've got this data. I want to make a chart for my story. Can you help me with that? I'd be like, great, boom, boom, boom. I'd make a chart. And that was really helpful. It was not my dream job, but it was helpful for kind of building reps and getting my hands on the tools of data visualization and kind of getting my foot in the world of journalism. But I mean, a thing that kind of unites all those things up here is this sort of long form, really getting to dive into things. And so with the work I was doing at Axios, it was mostly very quick turnaround, can you make this chart? It's going out tomorrow, and then the next day you're working on the next thing. Never really getting to really sink my teeth into anything for longer than a couple of hours. So I was really thrilled when I got a job at The Pudding. Right before I worked at Axios, I pitched The Pudding a story idea about crossword puzzles, and I got to work on this piece with them, kind of in partnership with them, and learn about their process and get to collaborate with a couple of their members. And they remembered me and they liked me, and they were like, hey, do you want to come work with us more? And I was like, yes, very much so. Please sign me up. And I've been there ever since. So I've gotten to work on a lot of really cool things over the last 4.5 years, I think, at my time at the Pudding, including this visualization, this story about performances of the national anthem, and kind of trying to quantify who gave the most extra performance, like who is deviating the most from a very standard rendition of the melody and making very different choices and quantifying that. We called it the diva score, and whoever got the highest diva score is the biggest diva. Anyway, in this whole story, it goes kind of phrase by phrase through the song. It shows different noteworthy performances and is a lot of fun. This is a story I worked on last year about abortion access in the US, and it kind of uses this metaphor of a maze to depict the restrictions and roadblocks in each state of the sort of different regulations around abortion care. So there are these like 6 stories that are drawn from, kind of sourced from different real stories that you can follow, but you can also kind of play a maze of every state in the US, and as you do it, you kind of learn about the different restrictions and the landscape of abortion access in that state. This is a story about Jay Dilla, who is a producer from the 90s, who kind of changed music really dramatically because he kind of used rhythm in a different way than musicians had before him. And I was really interested in this. I'm a musician. I really like doing stories with audio, and so this piece is kind of an explainer, kind of building all the tools and information about how grooves work so that you can understand just how like Jay Dilla's rhythmic style, how groundbreaking his rhythmic style was. Another audio sound-based piece, there's kind of a trend in the stories I'm most excited about. This is a story about street vendors in Mexico City. And I worked with my co-author on this piece, had lived in Mexico City, and he had recorded all these different snippets of sounds of these different street vendors that they're kind of saying like, hey, like I'm selling this thing, like FYI. And these sounds are kind of very iconic, and people who live there, they like recognize them. They're very like known. And so we had all these different sounds, and we commissioned this illustration that features all the different vendors in these different places. And as you go through the story, which kind of talks about what it's like to be a street vendor in Mexico City and some of the challenges they face with like the police kind of cracking down on where they're trying to sell their stuff. As you go, you kind of fly around this world and you like meet these different cool street vendors. Okay, so today I want to talk about how the pudding works, like behind the scenes, what's going on. And I want to talk about that from 3 different vantage points. The first is the process, like how we work, like literally do work. The second is how does it work? Like how do you make money? Like how does it sustain itself? What's the business model? And then the third, like how we work from a culture and kind of philosophy perspective, like what are the values that and ideas that underpin the way we run our organization. Let's do it. So we've already seen a lot of examples, but this is kind of the way we describe ourselves at the Pudding. We say the Pudding is a digital publication that explains ideas debated in culture with visual essays. So our stories are on lots of different topics, as you saw before, but the thing that kind of unites all of them is this visual component and then this data component that actually isn't in that sentence, and maybe it should be, but that's okay. I'm going to show you a couple more examples to kind of flesh this out, and because it's fun, let's see. Okay, great. These ones we can scroll through. So this is a piece from 2018. This is one of our most popular pieces. It's really, people are always like telling us, love the pocket story that was like 1 million years ago. But it's a story about women's pockets and kind of asking the question, like, do they suck as much as we feel that they do? Like, can we put data to that? And why is that? And exactly how much do they suck compared to men's pockets? So the authors of this piece actually went out and looked at a bunch of pants, measured the pants, and found out sort of like, okay, what are the average sizes for jeans or pants that are marketed for women versus marketed for men, and comparing them to each other. And I like this section where you get to like, you're like, what could fit in these pockets? Like a phone, maybe a wallet or someone's hand. Yeah, I think this is one of these pieces that like, it sort of starts with, sometimes we think of, we have ideas and we're kind of like, oh, we already know that, like that's kind of water is wet, like we're not saying anything new. And I think like, this is kind of, it's like we all know women's pockets like suck, but I think it can be really powerful to like put data to that, to a question that you maybe wouldn't think to put data to, and kind of like, it sort of ends up confirming this thing that we all intuitively know to be true. Here's another of my favorite stories. This is a piece that my coworker Matt worked on. It is basically, it's a multi-part piece. This first part was just a quiz that asks you to engage with this test. Ooh, great. Got some music. So it's gonna ask me when I was born. I was born in 1996. And then it's gonna test me on music from a different decade. So I might pick, like, let's pick the 1960s. And then it plays me hits from the 1960s and asks if I recognize them. So maybe I'm like, oh, I know that one really well. Oh, I don't really know that one. Oh, I think I know that one. Anyway, so I go through this whole quiz, and let's see, how do I get this to stop? Okay, I don't know how to make it pause. I'm just gonna close it. Anyway, lots of people did this and filled this out, and we got like millions of data points basically with people like, we know when you were born, we know what year this song was released, and we know like, did you recognize it or not? And that enabled Matt to then make these kind of follow-up pieces with that data where, for example, this is one where he's like, okay, here's a hypothetical dance floor that has like people of lots of different ages. So the data tells us that, you know, wait, let me go to this last part. The data tells us that, okay, if I were to play this song, the 40 to 49-year-olds would like really know it, but the other people wouldn't know it. And if I were to play the thong song, the 30 to 39-year-olds would really know it, but other people wouldn't know it. But if I played Eternal Flame, then I would get those two groups out at the same time because they both have high recognition of those songs. This one's really nice. It's kind of like, okay, this is the ultimate like wedding dance floor song, Staying Alive, I guess everybody recognizes. But you could really isolate specific groups if you played any of these songs that are kind of on the outer edges where they really recognize it and other people really don't recognize it, which is kind of funny. Let's see. Okay, I don't know why I'm surprising myself by these examples that I've chosen, but these are like some of my favorite pieces that we've made, so I'm glad I'm showing them to you. This is a piece by my coworker Alvin, where he looked at data from the American Time Use Survey, which is a survey that asks people, thousands of people every year, how they're spending their time. And so over the course of like a week or a couple of days, they document in very high detail like how they're spending their day. They're like, from 6 to 7, I like made breakfast and ate it with my 3 children. Like from 7 to 7:30, I walked to school. And they have these really detailed diaries, and they can see like, how are people spending their time and how is that changing over time? So in this story, Alvin starts us off with this guy. He's, you know, you can see on the right-hand corner, it's kind of tracking the time as we scroll. It's 4:30. This guy, Martin, is sleeping. We know what Martin's doing because of the data from the American Time Use Survey. Martin is a made-up name. We zoom out and we see lots of other people, like how are they spending their time? Okay, some people are sleeping, some people are like getting food, some people are with other people, some people are alone. And that's the big thing that Alvin found in this data that he wanted to tell this story about. You really can see in the data that people are increasingly spending more time alone, less time around other people, and they're also reporting that they're less happy with how their life is turning out overall. And so this kind of loneliness epidemic that we talk about, you can really see borne out in this data. And he kind of shows it to us by walking through the lives of these people over the course of this day. Here he points out, okay, I've highlighted the family and friends or the other people who are here. And so he sort of builds up this visual that I think was inspired by like kind of like a dollhouse, like we're seeing lots of different people, and tells this story about loneliness in the US and how it's impacting us. Okay, this is another fun one. This one's very interactive. I might ask for a volunteer. This is a little experiment where we ask you to spell celebrity names that are difficult to spell. and do this and make this cool kind of data visual with it where it shows, okay, most people type B, then they type R, then they type I. Then like there's kind of a drop-off point where maybe one person or something typed N at that point, but you can see all the different paths that people took. And this is the correct path to spell Britney, of Britney Spears. But you can see all the different ways that people were wrong, basically. So then it asks us to be our turn. I don't know. Which one do we want to do? Does anyone know how to spell Alanis Morissette's last name? Anyone want to give it a go? Does anyone not know how to spell it? Because then it'll look even cooler. Just yell out what you think the next letter is. Okay. Oh, we're still right. We were like the great few. That's amazing. Okay, what's next? Two S's? Okay. Wow, we're amazing. Okay. E. Wow, we're amazing. And look at how few people actually made it. I would not, wow, without your help, I would not have gotten there. Great, so this is fun. And this is like using data from other people who have like come to this site and tried to spell people's names. And so you can see, like, we're now part of the data that makes up this piece when the next person visits it. Great, one more example. This is a story about songs on country radio and how rare it is to hear back-to-back songs by female artists. So maybe you hear like one song by a female artist, but then you'll immediately go to a not female artist because that was a special moment and we don't want too much of that. So the author of this piece kind of had like an anecdotal like experience with this, but similar to kind of that pockets piece, wanted to like, okay, is this actually true? Is this actually happening? And how can I visualize this? I really like how she decided to kind of walk us through the story. She does this thing where she's starting very small, and then we're going to zoom out and get a lot bigger. So it's 8:35 on a Friday morning. You hop into your car. You're hearing this one song. OK, now we know. OK, now we have many songs. Like each line is a song. So she's kind of teaching us how to read this chart as we go. We've played all these different songs. You're hearing from Keith Urban, from all these different people, lots of male artists. And then we see, OK, eventually we hit a song, a back-to-back songs by women at this point. So blue means back-to-back songs by women. Took 9 hours to get there. And then we kind of zoom out because she looked at a bunch of different radio stations over a bunch of days, and we can now see, OK, here's over these selected dates. You can see how rare it is for this thing to happen. And yeah, I mean, it's a really striking visual, and it's really cool to see it on this big screen here. But I like how she built to this, just as a little like storytelling note, I guess, because if we just started with this, where she's like, look at this, isn't it cool that there are so few back-to-back women songs? We'd be like, okay, like, I guess, like, what is each bar? Like, I'm confused. But by building up really slowly, like, this is one song, like, this is 10 songs. We are able to kind of read that complex chart by the time we get to it. I want to look at it one more time because it's cool. OK. Sweet. So why do we make these things? I mean, I think they're cool. Maybe you think they're cool as well. But we make these things because we think data and understanding data is really important. There are a lot of complex issues and topics that require understanding data and understanding things about what the data says. But often data can be really dry, really hard to understand, and something that's like not appealing. So we try to use visuals and interactivity to make data fun, compelling, interesting, like something you want to lean into, something that you feel like you can understand. So the adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words, is really something that we base our work off of. Like the visuals are really going to be the main piece of the story. There's text, but you weren't oohing and ahhing over the paragraphs. Like you were oohing and ahhing over that big visual that like made the point better, ideally, than a paragraph could do. And also the interactivity, like we got to spell Alanis Morissette, and it was like kind of scary at one point because we thought we might be wrong, and we got to like be a part of the story. And actually, our data from like trying to spell it is now part of that story and part of that experience. And for me, like getting to like reach out and touch the story and kind of like be a part of it makes it just more engaging and makes me want to lean in more. Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about the process that we take to make some of these stories. So every project that we do is really different and follows a very different path and takes different amounts of time, but they all kind of unite on these 4 main big steps that we go through in order to make them. So I'm going to use the anthems piece as an example to explain these 4 steps, and I'm going to show you what I was doing at each point of these 4 steps on this project about the national anthem. So step number 1 is ideas. Where do ideas come from? And I feel like I have often thought about ideas as like these rare gems that are like really hard to find, and that I'm just like not a special person that's able to find these super rare gems, and other people can do that, but I can't. And I think that's sort of, I mean, that's an unhelpful and not correct way to think about ideas. Ideas are everywhere. They're anywhere and everywhere. You just have to like decide to see them as ideas. And you have to keep the bar low for like what counts as an idea. So maybe you're having a conversation with a friend and you're like, wow, this is so interesting, like this is so engaging, and like maybe there's an idea there. Maybe there's the seed of something there. Maybe you listen to a podcast and there's a quote that's like really sticking with you. Like maybe that's an idea. Maybe there's something there. It's not fully formed, but if you kind of keep that bar low and also capture these ideas, like you'll find yourself rich with ideas. Like ideas are not these rare things. They're all around us. So we capture our ideas in a lot of different ways on our team. These are 3 examples from members of our team. This is a Notion document, a Google document, a physical notebook, whatever you need to like jot it down so that you don't forget and so that you can return to it later. The national anthems idea was, this is where it started. I wrote like visualizing crazy vocal runs. Maybe that would be cool. And I didn't actually like take it further than that for like a year until after I wrote this. But I had it, and I was thinking about, oh, I want to collaborate with this specific person. What's an idea we could do? Okay, let's pull out our notebooks of these random little sparks of ideas, and then we decided that was the one that we were most excited about pursuing. So once you've got an idea that's feeling kind of like, okay, I feel like I could pursue this, the next step that I like to think about is the exploration phase. I like to think about exploration phase as like a garden. So you've got your garden, you've got your little seeds of these ideas, and every day you water the garden and you see what happens. You don't expect to, water it one day and the next day come and it's like shot up and it's so tall and it's so awesome and you're like, yeah, I did that, that was great. Like you might even come back one day and it looks like it's in worse shape than it was the day before. And that can feel discouraging, but I think it's important in the exploration phase to welcome and expect that struggle. Like it's not all gonna go perfectly, it's gonna be a winding road, but all you need to do is not be paralyzed at this moment, not be like, there's too many things I could do and I'm not gonna be perfect, so I can't do anything. The key here is to keep moving, to try things, and to try to just start small and obvious, do the obvious next thing. So for the Anthems project, the obvious first thing to do is watch Fergie's NBA All-Star Game performance of the national anthem because it's hilarious, and would really highly recommend. I showed Jerry minutes ago. We played it really loud and big, and it was great. But we watched several renditions of the national anthem that we remembered. We're like, oh, these are ones that should be included if we were going to do something about the national anthem, and visualizing how people are singing it. And we started this spreadsheet where we were keeping track of the ones that we found, like what event they were singing it at, when they were singing it. And then we did this very simple version of the analysis of how they sang it. We just said, okay, let's break it up into these 8 phrases, like, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed. And we just gave it the yellow ones are if they changed something about the melody, like they did something different. The white ones are they kept it standard. And so just from this, like, this took like 30 minutes, like super easy, starting small, experimenting. And even from here, we can see, okay, like people tend to start mixing it up at the end. Like at the beginning, we're keeping it simple, and then by the end, like everybody's putting their own spin on it. Some people are putting their own spin on it like the whole time, and that's pretty interesting and noteworthy. So at this point, we're seeing, okay, this is pretty cool. And we took this small sample of like 8 or so renditions of the song, and we used this tool that allowed us to give it the audio, and then it gave us back the pitch that they were singing over time. And that let us make this. So this is like an exploratory chart. Like these aren't the colors we're going to use later. This is just like trying to get something on the page to see if there's something interesting. So up here, this is the pitch on the y-axis. So higher notes, lower notes. We transposed them all to be in the same key so we could more easily compare them. And then time on the x-axis. So this looks kind of cool. Like you can see everybody's taking a kind of similar path. It's a little bit hard to read because they're all going at slightly different like tempos, and so they don't always line up. And we're really interested specifically in that like melodic difference. So we wanted to be able to see like them lined up in time, but see like whether they were doing different things on the y-axis. So this is another version we made at this stage where we're just like, let's look at every single word and line it up by every word and just see what's happening. Like, okay, twilights, like everybody's doing the same thing. Like here we can see, oh, there's kind of some deviations, some different things happening here. And in the end, we kind of did like a mashup of or something in between. We broke it up into these 16 phrases of the song so we could really zoom in and see those deviations like we can here. But so we didn't have to like go through 100 words like on here. But once we'd made these charts, like I was super excited. I was like, this is looking cool. Like this is, imagine if we had 100 versions of the song, we could really do some cool things. And at this point, we had sort of tested out this process of like, we watch the video, like we feed it to the software, we make this chart. Now we're kind of ready to go from small to big, to expand our data set and to start thinking about like, okay, if we had 100 versions, like how would we tell the story? How would we structure it? Like what might this look like? So now we're on the third step of the process, and this is feedback. So feedback plays an important role at many stages of the process, but this is like the first point at which I always want to get feedback from the team. This is the point where I've tested some things out. Like it's still kind of an idea, but I've got some concrete things to show. Like I can show people this, and I could say, we might navigate the story like this, and this is what the point of the story is, and things like that. So I, at this point, had these charts and like a Google Doc outline of sort of like, this is how the story might feel, like this is what it might look like, these are the points you might hit. And then I did something that I think is really important with feedback, which is to ask specific questions, to make it clear, here's the type of feedback I want. Here's the type of feedback I'm looking for. Because, you know, I don't want, if I show you this, I really don't want, I'm not looking for you to say, you know, that purple could be a little brighter. It's like not, you know, that's not what this is about. Like this is about just putting stuff on the page. And also, if I'm nearly done with the project, like I'm not trying to hear big structural changes of like how this could be an entirely different thing. That's also not useful. So being really clear about asking for what kind of feedback you want. At this stage, this is like a screenshot from the feedback document I sent to the team. And I was like, what do you think about the structure? Anything that should be reordered, anything that's missing, anything that's boring, anything that's confusing, like tell me those moments because those are the ones those are the things I need to tweak. And my coworker Russell said something that ended up really sticking with us on this project. He was like, oh, I really like these, like the concept of these phrases that you've broken it out into. Maybe you can orient the whole thing around the phrases. Like he was really drawn to that. And we were like, okay, I like that. And that ended up making it into the final piece. So now we're on to kind of the final stage, the presentation layer. Ideally at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about the story. Like we have the data. I know what the data says. I know what the story is I'm trying to tell. I've confirmed that that's interesting, that it's not confusing, that it's all these things. And now I'm just doing the work of like making it real and making it beautiful and deciding what's kind of the look and feel of this piece. So over here is a mood board that we made for this piece. And we do this often, sometimes at the beginning of a project, and other times when we're kind of starting on this kind of production step of like making it real, which is that we throw lots of different pieces of inspiration on this board. This is made in Figma. And we say, okay, great, I kind of want something like this and something like this, and pulling all these different aspects from different places. So this is a story about the national anthem. We're like, maybe it should be patriotic. Like maybe there's like, maybe the Obama Hope poster vibes. Like that could be kind of cool. We brought in all these different visuals of different ways of visualizing music, or like a line of somebody singing. Like maybe it's a circle, maybe it's lines, maybe it's these intersecting lines. We brought in these cool like collage style, I don't know, we're trying to figure out how are we going to make these pop stars like do cool like artsy things with that, and we brought in all these different collage things. So ultimately, the look and feel of the piece, like it's not any one of these, but it takes little elements from different pieces and mashes them all together. For me, like I feel like I'm sort of a novice designer. Like the storytelling and the coding are like my bread and butter, and then the like picking colors and making things beautiful and pretty, I'm sort of like, ooh, like I'm bad at that. But I've learned a lot from my coworker, Jan, who I worked on this project with. She is like an amazing designer. She always like, I'm just always so impressed with what she makes, and I'm like, how do you do that? And I feel like from observing her, I've learned that she's really following this process. She brings in tons of inspiration, and then she picks little pieces from different things that she likes and that she knows she's drawn to, and she's really masterful at like bringing them together in the right way, and that's really where the like originality comes in, of bringing these things together. And the final step often is the coding. So making these things into web pages. The tools that we use for this are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are kind of like the big three languages of web development or making websites. That's basically what we're doing. Everything I showed you is a website that is made with HTML and CSS, and especially JavaScript, because JavaScript is the one that controls the interactivity. JavaScript is the one that lets me click on something and have it like know that I did that and do something because of that. So these are all like, if you're interested in making things like this, I would look into learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's really fun and rewarding like learning, I think. And yeah, it's a big part of our project in particular because that interactive piece we really value. And at the end of the 4 steps, you have a finished piece. So this took me like 3 or 4 months to make. And that's pretty standard for projects like this. Sometimes it takes a lot longer. Sometimes it takes shorter. But 3-4 months is pretty average on a piece like this. Great. So we talked about the process. Now we're going to talk about the financial side of all of this. So at the Pudding, we're basically making these beautiful passion projects that are really cool and fun, and they really advance this craft of data journalism and data visualization. But the Pudding does not make any money. The Pudding makes negative money because we pay people to make things with us, and we don't charge any subscriptions or anything like that. So the way we keep the lights on is that we simultaneously run a studio called Polygraph, and it's the same people, but they're kind of 2 separate entities. And at Polygraph, we do work kind of like the stuff at the Pudding, in that it's data, it's storytelling, it's interactive, it's visual. But we work with brands or nonprofits or museums or newsrooms or anybody who will pay us to do this kind of work for the things that they need. So, and the purpose of doing that is to sustain the work that we get to do on the Pudding. We kind of do exactly the amount of work we need to do on the Polygraph side, such that we can then return to the Pudding and do the cool stuff. But it's a nice model because it allows us to obviously like do that work while keeping the lights on. So for me, I spend most of my time on the Pudding side. We have 4 team members who primarily work on the Polygraph side, and then the other 5 primarily work on the Pudding side. So I spend about 70% of my time doing Pudding things, 30% of my time doing Polygraph things, which is a nice balance, because sometimes after, spending 4 months like listening to Patti LaBelle and Steven Tyler singing the national anthem over and over and making this perfect experience that I'm really super proud of, which is really fun, I'm like craving some constraints. I'm craving someone to say, hey, make this, and it's got to be like this and like that, and it has to be done by this date. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to sit down and do that. And sometimes that is kind of freeing and a nice balance to this other type of work. Okay, the third facet of sort of how the Pudding works that I wanted to dive into is sort of these like culture philosophy points of sort of the ideas that underpin how we do things. And I've written 4 of these that I think stand out to me, particularly because they're pretty different from how like traditional newsrooms work. And a lot of us at the Pudding, like we used to work in more traditional newsrooms and sort of had those experiences and are trying to like do something different, like have it feel a little bit different, address some of the concerns or challenges that we've had at other places, and make kind of a new value system in this place. So the first is that we operate as a collective rather than a hierarchy, which means there are no official like editors. Nobody is telling anybody what to do. Everyone has like equal power, which is beautiful. People get to manage their own time and decide what they want to work on. And this is beautiful. It can also be challenging. When I first started, I was like, hey guys, I'm really new. Like, I have a lot to learn. I'd actually love like a manager. Like, I'd love someone to tell me what to do sometimes. So we kind of have, the way we think of it is like, you have to kind of be intentional about specifically what you need. So at that time, I needed a mentor. I needed someone to check in with regularly. So I said, hey, Russell, can you have skills that I want, and like, I like talking to you. Let's meet every week. And I want you to support me on my goals and check in with me on my goals. And so he was sort of my manager, but like he was just doing that piece of that. He wasn't telling me, you know, Michelle, you have to do this and you have to spend your time on this. It was like the piece that I needed, but not the pieces that I didn't need. So now that I've like, once you learn to kind of work within that and like ask for what you need, I think it can be a really nice system. The second is we're not chasing current events or clicks, which I mean, so there are places that are covering current events that are really important and that is great, and they have more resources than us, and they are doing that work. And we're almost saying, okay, we're kind of trying to fill a different need. Like, we are trying to tell stories that are evergreen, that are kind of like always interesting, and that we can then take our time on and really sink our teeth into and dig into them. And so that allows us to take our time, and we're not racing the clock to kind of get something out around a current event. We can make these things that kind of allow us to go deeper. And for clicks, like we do track views on our stories, and we like sort of pay attention to that, but we try not to let that be like the end-all be-all marker of our success. Like, because as I mentioned, like we don't need the clicks to make money. Like that, it actually, the stakes, like, it would be nice for a bunch of people to see my piece, and I want that to happen, but also like it's not the end of the world if it's a little bit less than I wanted. So I try not to let that make it feel like a piece was unsuccessful or it totally didn't do what it was supposed to do. The third is that we're trying to sort of advance the craft of data and visual journalism. So instead of trying to, you know, pump out the same type of things over and over, we really try to push ourselves to visualize things in new ways, to try new techniques and experiment a lot. And sometimes like that goes great and we make this cool thing that people like. Other times it like, maybe it's a little weird or a little wacky or it didn't quite work. But we think that the freedom that we have to have the time to experiment and to be a little bit weird and wacky, like it's a good use of that to kind of try to advance this pretty new field of data journalism and data visualization. And the fourth one is that we really value having the author's voice shine through in our stories. We think that when an author is part of the story and they make their perspective really clear, and you know, everyone's perspective is inevitably limited, but they make that really clear and transparent, and maybe even they're part of the story, like they're asking a question, they're saying, I really wondered what the answer to this question was, let me take you on this journey with me. We think that makes stories really engaging, and we try to lean into that in our style of storytelling. We also are only 9 people on our staff, and so we do a lot of collaborating with freelancers who pitch us their ideas that we would not have had, and we say, awesome, that's a great idea, like we're gonna help you bring that to life, and then we're able to make more things, amplify more voices. You yourself could pitch us a story if you'd like at that website. It just takes filling out a pretty simple form about like what your idea is about, and we'll get back to you within a couple weeks. And even if we don't do the story, we always try to like give really detailed feedback and be like, oh, this is what we liked about it, like this is where it could be better. So would love for you all to do that if you're interested. Cool, so I'm kind of like, this is an attempt to kind of zoom out and look at some of what I've been describing. Like, I've kind of been painting this picture of like, the pudding's awesome, like we get to obsess, we get to make the best thing ever, we get to experiment, we get all this autonomy, and like in traditional newsrooms, it's different, we're trying to do it differently, we're breaking away from that, which I think some of that is true, and it is really great to work at the pudding, but it's complicated. Like, there are things about traditional newsrooms that we don't have that like are really good. For example, like a different way of seeing, deadlines and urgencies and having to stick to the script is like covering the news is obviously really important. I don't have to tell you all that. And it's really good and important work. And also like when you're another way of seeing kind of sticking to the script and sticking to a brand, like having a big brand and viewership and making impact is really valuable and really important. And like a lot of big traditional newsrooms have more of that than we have as this kind of like niche, small, still growing place. Kind of like I mentioned before, like hierarchy like feels bad, but also like hierarchy can mean really clear mentorship and really clear paths to improvement, and that's a really good thing. On the pudding side, like these things are good, but also they're complicated. Like I get time to obsess and make the best thing possible, but that can end up feeling like a lot of pressure, and it's like hard to know, okay, when is something done? Like no one's telling me you need to finish this by this time, it needs to be done, like ship it off. Like I have to kind of decide that for myself, and that can be creatively kind of challenging and maddening at times. Similarly, like there's a lot of autonomy. I can do whatever I want, kind of, which is awesome. But what happens when you don't know what to do next? Like that can be really challenging. You have to really learn to like chart your own course, which especially when I was starting 4 years ago, like was really challenging. And I've built some of those skills, but I think like the lack of structure can be a blessing and a curse. It's complicated. So I say all this to say like wherever you work, there will be pros and cons. Like I love where I work, and there are also pros and cons, and it's all about kind of, I guess, picking the cons that you're okay with or the cons that you're less furious about. And yeah, this trade-off, given these trade-offs, I'm really happy with where I am, and yeah. Okay, that was a lot of stuff. I'd really love to hear any questions you all have about how the pudding works on any of these axes or anything else at all. And yeah, let's do it. Go for it.
How much background and experience did you have before you were able to get hired there? And would you say it was kind of hard to get hired there?
So yeah, the pudding is really unique and weird. Like they don't hire very much at all. So I just kind of got lucky that in the one couple of times they were hiring recently, like they hired me. My job at Axios though, so that was like my first kind of foot in the door of data visualization and data journalism. Your question was what was the first part of your question?
How much background?
How much background?
Did you have before they hired you?
Yeah, at that time, so I had my kind of background in computer science, but I had never worked in journalism, and I had just had like these projects that I had made that I was showing in my portfolio, and a lot of excitement, and like that's what I had. And yeah, so I was pretty green at that point when I was hired at Axios, and at that point they were really expanding their data visualization team, and they were hiring a bunch of people, and so I had applied to a ton of jobs, and I only got the one at Axios, and so I was like, yes, I will do that one because I'm new and I don't really have very much experience. So I had experience in one specific facet of like this work that requires a lot of different skills, and that's pretty common. Like a lot of people come into it like being really strong at one thing, but they're still learning these other things. So at that point, I was definitely like still learning a ton of it, and basically just had some coding skills from a totally different industry. Yeah.
Do you ever work in person, or is it mostly remote?
Yeah, mostly remote. So our company is totally remote. There are 9 of us. We all live in different cities in the US, and we try to get together like a couple times a year for like fun hanging out basically, and like getting to know each other and that sort of thing. We're actually in like 3 weeks we're gonna do that, and that'll be really nice. But yeah, I really like working remotely. It's really nice, but I do sometimes crave some more of the like in-person collaboration, so it's nice to get those opportunities to get together. Yeah.
I'm wondering, if you're a news organization not reporting on current news, how do you get an audience?
Yeah, good question. I maybe wouldn't call us a news organization, I guess. I mean, depends on if we define news as like current news. But I would say our audience kind of comes from like two places. So we're sort of here, let me go to the homepage here. So as you see, like each of these stories are about totally different things. Like there's a lot of different topics being covered here. Like someone who's really into wine might like love this story. Like someone who's really into samples and music might really love this story. So there's kind of one part of our audience that kind of comes in on like a story by story basis. Like they find this story about the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and they're like, yeah, like this is so cool, like I'm obsessed with this. And then they maybe don't read anything else that we make. I mean, maybe they do and that'd be great, but they're kind of there for the one story or the one type of story. Like maybe every time we do a sports story, they're into that. So that's like one piece of our audience. And then I think the other piece of our audience is kind of people who are fans of the medium and not so much like the topics. So they're like, we are equally excited about like data storytelling and we don't care what the piece is about, but we want to read whatever you publish next because we're into the format that you do. So there's kind of there's those people, and then there's the people who come in like story by story because they're into whatever we're talking about.
But do you like advertise it at all? Or is it just kind of like if someone's Googling a random topic and this comes like?
Yeah. So we have we're on social media, like we have like Instagram versions of all these stories. So we get people through socials. We have a newsletter, that kind of thing. But yeah, those are the main like avenues through which we like get people and they're like notified about our work and when we publish stuff.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
I think I'm the second kind of fan.
Great.
I'm gonna
Love that.
One of the things I've discovered as I've been following you and meeting you in person and seeing these presentations has helped me a lot. There's almost a new language to learning how these stories work. So there's a little bit of investment to become the second type of fan.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to me in a lot of ways. I wonder if you see that happening, if it takes people a while to really understand this way you're trying to tell a story. And then the big part of it is I really, I do believe that this type of stuff is the future. Like we will be consuming stories like this and will just become second nature, like watching television soon enough.
Yeah.
If you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do think, the goal is to make our stories like pretty intuitive to follow and intuitive to, to read and understand. But we do experiment with like some wacky ways of presenting data that like are not the most obvious to be able to just like, oh, I've seen like a bar chart. I've seen lots of those. I know exactly how to read those. So sometimes I think you're right that there can sometimes be that barrier to entry a little bit. I was working on a project in the polygraph space, so a client project, which is very different from the pudding space, where we were doing data visualization for like a city that had conducted this survey on like how they wanted their city to be better, and people had like submitted all these answers, and then we were making a report out of it. And they were really emphasizing like we want to keep the data viz very simple and like intuitive types of data visualization. And we of course come in and we're like, and then it'll be like a crazy thing that does whatever. But that was really, I appreciated that like prodding of like, hey, like, no, like if you're showing someone a chart that they've never seen before, it's possible that they're gonna like struggle with how to read it. But I think we try to, like in that country music piece, like that's not a line chart or a bar chart, but with charts like that, it's like we want to step you through it and kind of teach you how to read it like as we're going. So the goal would be that it would be accessible even if you're unfamiliar. Yeah.
I really enjoy your presentation, and I've been very intrigued with data visualization for a long time. I think it's really interesting how you approach telling the story. Like I really think that country music is so powerful to show how favoritism or selection comes against female artists, and I think it's a really interesting way to reveal that type of information in this very kind of persuasive and, very blatantly visual way, which I just love. I don't think people are used to consuming it like this, because usually it is like a one-liner, your data viz. It might be, showing traffic in the London Tube or, different things like that.
Yeah.
But so what do you think, where do you think it's going to go, and what are you excited about for your next project?
What am I excited about for my next project? I have a lot of projects I'm excited about. I'm trying to choose some. But maybe, okay, first half of your question was like more, repeat the first half of your question.
Kind of about the complexity of your data viz.
Yeah,
Like,
so
I think
similar.
it's really about the storytelling, and I've looked at your music DNA, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Super cool. I love too that you're doing your music. But more it's about how people consume the data, and you're telling the story and really making information show kind of inequity. I like that
Yeah.
about that. And for me, seeing the music DNA, hearing where it started and then how it was sampled is so fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you see it going? Like, how do you see it? Like, I've seen New York Times do it, but again, it's more like a one-trick pony, or it takes you through a very linear storyline, where yours is much deeper.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily know like what next form the form will take, I guess. I do think like to both of these points, like this sort of like, I guess I'll go to the music samples thing. Like, yeah, like, well, okay. I was thinking about the magazine that the students were showing me today. It's sort of, and I was sort of like, oh, this kind of reminds me of the pudding, because I feel like pudding pieces, they kind of ask you to like sit down and like pay attention, like, and to like be immersed in something. Like, this isn't something that you're just gonna like get like by glimpsing at it and be like, okay, yeah, I get it. And like, that's fine. There's lots of things that you can glimpse at and get things out of. Like, this is something that you're supposed to kind of like sit down with. And like, we're gonna, like, if you're willing to like give us a little bit of your attention at the start, our goal is to like really bring you through it and like bring it home. So, so yeah, it's sort of like, we sort of think about it as like, it's an immersive experience that we're asking someone to like lean into for like maybe 10 minutes. And that's sort of how it's designed. And like, you know, try to be like kind of unapologetic about that. It's like, yeah, like I value that like in the world. I want those things to exist in the world. I want to lean into 10-ish minute like immersive experiences. And even though not everyone wants to do that all the time, and that might be changing, like I still think there's value in that. But yeah, I just want to keep making, I guess in terms of like future projects, like I don't know, I've been like using a lot of AI lately and like thinking about AI. Like I just want to keep making things that like feel like a person like made this and was like obsessing over something on the other end of it, because I feel like I can feel that when I'm reading something or like watching something or looking at something. So that's what I'm excited about. Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you about AI, because I read one of the AI story that
Yeah.
you did, and I was curious if you all have like a position on AI use, because you are doing all this, collecting all this data, and like, are you inclined to use AI at all?
Yeah, so this piece kind of summarizes my stance on AI. So if you read it, that's good. But this, and I can kind of describe it for everybody. I did this with my coworker Russell, and we thought of this a little while ago when these chatbots were really just starting to be popular, and we were sort of like, okay, like, and kind of when people were asking the question, is it going to take my job? Like, how good is it? And so we were like, okay, let's run an experiment. Like, what if we try to guide? We used Claude. Through the process that I just described to you. It's a little different from how I put it on the slides, but it's basically similar. Through the process of making a data story. And we ask it, hey, can you come up with some ideas? And they're like, yeah, here are like 3 ideas. And we say, okay, like, can you maybe, like, this one's our favorite. Can you flesh it out a little bit more? And so we had it like do the thing that I just described. And then we gave it a grade for each step. So for this step, we gave it a C+. We felt they were fine, but not impressive. And at the end, you can see we showed a lot of different, like these are lots of charts it made that were wrong, and we were trying to get it to be right. And so we spent a lot of time playing with it. And I mean, this kind of sums up where I feel like it is right now in terms of like doing stuff. But like specifically for these 2 ones where it got like a little bit of a higher grade, that's because there were some things it was able to do really well. So for the data collection stage, let's find that. We basically had it write some code and make some exploratory charts later on. And we were kind of like, this is pretty good. Like we maybe would use this in our flow. I think especially with code, it's really good at like assisting with writing code, and that's the main thing I use it for. Like I would not use it to like generate ideas. Like I gave it a C++. Like it could do an okay job at it, but it's not really that useful for that, I think. But for writing code, it can do things like really amazingly fast, and I sort of use it as like a little side thing that just helps me do things faster. And I think the other thing we learned from the coding piece is that it's really only as good as the person using it. So I like know a lot about coding, and so I can use it really well, and I can tell if it's wrong, and I can ask it the right way such that I know it'll like do it right. And that goes a really long way. Like if you're brand new to something, or if you don't understand what it's spitting out and you're like, great, I'll just use it, like that can go bad really quickly. It's really important to like understand what it's giving you. So if you have more of that experience, it helps. So yeah, I don't know. This was like a year ago, so I feel like these things change so fast, but in general, I use it sparingly for certain tasks, and I hope that it doesn't get scarily better at some of the creative things, because that is scary and weird. Yeah.
So, since you guys have so much like freedom with your team and like your deadlines, and there's not that hierarchy aspect, what's it like making a collaborative piece with another person in the pudding and that process and how it changes things?
Yeah, like two people within the pudding working on a project together. Yeah, that's kind of my favorite way to work, I feel like. I like doing projects on my own. It's fun to have total control over things, but I feel like I get stuck, and then I'm like question my whole life and all these different things. But when I'm working with someone else, I can just be like, hey, like, and then I don't question my whole life, and we can like get unstuck together. So it works. I mean, it works the same as kind of how I described. Like the anthems piece I worked on with someone internally at the pudding, and we usually kind of decide, okay, how do we want to split up the work? Like, do we want to do this all like together, like live, or do we want to say, you handle this part, I'll handle this part? Like with Russell, he's a big coder as well, and we'll often like be like, let's code together, and we'll like screen share, and we'll like write code at the same time, or like talk through the code that we're writing. But with other people, maybe I'd say, I'll handle the code, like I'll just show you when I'm done, or I'll show you different things, and we're just communicating on Slack and sharing updates and talking all the time. So with the story with two people, like I'm probably meeting with them every day, at least once a day, like talking about kind of like where we are and what we need to do next. Yeah.
Because most of your work is online, and you said that you kind of crave that human interaction sometimes, do you seek out creative avenues in where you live?
Yeah, I should more. I guess work-ish related. Like I know there are a couple people I know who like work sort of in this space that sometimes like meet for coffee, and then we'll like co-work a little bit, and like that's really nice, and I probably could do that more. The other thing, like this semester, I'm teaching a class at at Berkeley, so that's fun. I get to like see people in person. Like once a week, I walk over there and I like talk to all these students, and I teach a class, and that has kind of fed that like in-person need a little bit as well. Sweet. Thank you all for your great questions. Awesome. I'll just hang out here if you want to talk more, but thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much.
Sweet. Wow. I need some water.